A single HTML email can have over 614 potential renderings across different email clients. Coding HTML emails is a minefield of compatibility issues and design limitations, with table-based layouts, inline styles, and features stuck in the last century. But there is a way to cut through all that complexity with a single powerful tool. Well, two tools really. In today's video, we're diving into React Email with Resend, which brings the React mental model to email creation and sending. We'll be exploring why email development is such a nightmare, how React Email and Resend solve this nightmare, and of course, look at how to set up these two tools in your Next.js project. We'll be using my Next.js starter repository as the foundation, but of course, this will work for any Next.js project. We'll be looking at how this order confirmation email is built and sent out. I'll provide chapters if you want to skip ahead to the actual code. But first, before going into how to use React Email, why should we use it? In other words, what is the problem? In the past, I've spent hundreds of hours tearing my hair out trying to get simple, responsive HTML emails to render correctly. If you factor in all the different variations between webmail, mobile, and desktop clients, at least 614 client configurations could be rendering your email, and each comes with its own set of quirks and particularities. The Can I Email website, which is like Can I Use but for emails, shows feature support across different email clients. Thankfully, there is a slither of good news. Apple clients, which according to Litmus account for 54% of the market, have good feature support. But it goes downhill from there. The second largest client base, Gmail, is also one of the worst culprits. It will strip out the style tags, which makes CSS-based layout impossible and means all styles need to be coded in line. Next, Outlook is even worse. For a long time, the client relied on the Word HTML rendering engine of all things, which is hardly known for being pixel perfect. And sure, the latest iteration has been upgraded to a more performant engine, but there's still a large installed base for the old clients, especially if you're addressing a B2B audience. And between these extremes, anything goes. Some clients support web fonts, others stick to web-safe fonts. Media queries have spotty support, and you can forget about Flexbox and grid layouts. Most email clients simply ignore them. In short, it's a mess. To make matters worse, the feedback loop is slow and painful. You can't just reload the page. You need to send out the email to all the different email clients, then open them up and look at the result, and then rinse and repeat. This complexity has given rise to specialized tools like Litmus, which charges upwards of $100 a month just to let you test how your email works across all these variations of email clients. But this is where React Email steps in. First, let's start by installing it using the automatic setup. The documentation provides a simple command that depends on the package manager that you are using. Using npm, the command is npx create-email at latest. I'm using pnpm in my project, so for me the command is pnpm create email, and yarn follows the same syntax as pnpm. Now, React Email provides a playground for you to test out the commands. It creates a subdirectory, which is called React Email Starter. And then if you go into there and you launch the installation and start the server using the dev command, then you are given a playground, which allows you to test email templates during development. You can iterate on your email designs faster and with more confidence. Now that that's out of the way, why use React Email? Well, it brings React's component-based architecture to email development. Before we look at the code, I'd like to be perfectly honest. React Email actually provides example templates that we can see here. And you can use these templates to build on them. I actually used this CodePen Challenges template and I adapted it to build my transactional email example. Now, there's an important tip to mention here. The first way to make compatibility easier is to ensure that your email content is constrained within a 600 pixel or so column. You can have background decorations, but the actual email needs to be constrained. It just makes things a lot easier. Now, let's take a look at the code within my email. First, I've defined a base width constant to constrain my email content with it. Then I use that constant in the styles. For example, here in container, I've defined width and I interpolate the base width and add in the pixels. These style, and this one here in particular and the others, are then injected back into the different components of my email. As you can see, this code is actually fairly basic. React Email provides standard components like container and section and image and body and head and preview and text and row and section and all these. And the email looks like a typical page render, except that it uses these specific components. Now, remember those 614 potential email renderings that I talked about earlier? How does React Email handle this complexity? That's why we're using the React Email components. These are pre-tested for compatibility across popular email clients such as Gmail and Apple Mail and Outlook and Yahoo Mail. This means that we can focus on creating our email content without getting bogged down in cross-client compatibility issues. And of course, all the time while keeping the React mental model. And cherry on top, using Resend, it integrates nicely within NextJS. Why does Resend work so well with React Email? Well, it all boils down to this. React Email and Resend were created by the same team, which means they integrate perfectly together. And as a side note, you don't have to use Resend. It's just a lot easier to set up. Sending an email is as simple as initializing the Resend client with an API key, a secret API key, so it must be done on the server, and then passing the root React component and the email address that you want to send to. Now let's take a closer look. First, we need to install Resend using your package manager, typing npm install resend or pnpm install resend. Then we need to sign up for the Resend service and generate an API key by clicking on the API keys section in the menu and then create API key. Once we have the API key, we put it in the .env file in our Next.js app, and we also make sure that our provider has it under the name Resend API key. I've added it to my Vercel account, for example. Now, let's send an email together. First, we need to make sure that this is sent only on the server, since the API key is secret, so we specify use server. Now we need to initialize the Resend client with the API key, so we create the new Resend, open the brackets, process.env, resend API key. Finally, we call this resend client with the template that we've passed it in. So we call resend.emails.send, and we specify who the email is from, who we're sending it to, what the subject is, and then we have this React parameter where we're going to pass in the template. I've added in a generic type which allows us to specify the type of props that the React template from React Email expects. And this means I can simply trigger the email by passing in the relevant information. If we look here at the send order completed email, this triggers the send email function and it passes in the order info props as a type. It has the type, and it passes in the purchase confirmation, which is the template that we looked at earlier, which has the purchase order passed in. So this defines the send email function that we've defined with the correct email component and all the information that it needs. As you can see, there is a bit of work there, but the actual sending part is really simple. With React Email and Resend, email sending is no longer a nightmare, it's now just a pain in the neck. And I actually enjoy keeping the same component-based approach to building emails. Now, if you're tired of spending hours debugging email templates, it might be time to try out this combination. Now, of course, the next step is to set up a contact form with captcha validation. That's a whole new nightmare. Thankfully, not one for this video. Oh, and I'm providing access to my starter repository to the members of my email newsletter, along with others code I've produced. So make sure you sign up. I've provided a link in the description, and I'll see you in the next video.